but I've watched quarterback play all over the country the last 2 weeks. And right now, I don't think there's a guy that is more dangerous than John Mateer. Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy. So happy to have you guys here with us today. It is our Monday show, one of our most popular shows of the week, where we do a slightly deeper dive. We watch the games on Saturday. We come back, review the games, watch them again, in some cases watch them a third time. And today we have some bigger picture takeaways with what transpired this past weekend. Some notable observations. Talk a little bit about the hot seat in some cases, which we don't always love to do. Give you a couple things that we thought might be able to improve upon with a couple of the teams that maybe didn't have their best stuff this weekend. So we'll talk about it. Hit a lot of different things. We'll also give out team of the week. We'll give out dude of the week. We'll get to some of your bold predictions from last week. Some of you guys nailed it. Some of you not so much. But either way, really, really good stuff. We always encourage you to follow the show on social media at AlwaysCFB. Plenty of stuff there for you as well. If you're here with us via the podcast platform, we have at times gotten absolutely pummeled because of predictions on the show. People rate the show based on predictions and the fact that we, quote, hate your team. That's not the case. I even have a Florida State helmet on the backdrop here at Always College Football, and will, because they're playing great. They deserve some recognition. We also would just encourage you, if you could, just go ahead, 5-star review, be awesome, if that's what you think we deserve. If you don't, no problem, all good, up to you. If you're here with us via the ESPN College Football YouTube page, appreciate you guys being there as well. Subscribe to the College Football YouTube page. We'll clip out parts of the show, so if you don't want to watch an hour, that's fine. You can watch 5, 6, 7 minutes. So we really appreciate the time, and we look forward to diving into our top 10 takeaways. Number one's probably not going to surprise you. It was the game of the weekend, and we have some takeaways from it. Takeaway number one, Oklahoma is back, folks. And that's a little tip of the cap to Joe Tessitore, who famously said back in 2016 that Texas is back, folks. No, Oklahoma is back, ladies and gentlemen. Only matchup this past weekend that featured two ranked teams. Oklahoma wins the game 24-13 over Michigan in what was a physical play. That game felt like a playoff setting, didn't it? Like just two heavyweights going toe-to-toe. Looking at the Sooners defense, revisiting that, man, they were really impressive. I really liked what I saw from that group, but that should not come as a huge surprise. They were able to hold Michigan freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood to just 9 of 24, 142. Did give up a couple plays, but there was relentless pressure. That group up front defensively is outstanding. And while, yes, their aggressiveness did get gashed the one time by Justice Haynes on that 75-yard play on the first play of the second half, they really did a good job of corralling this Michigan group across the board. 71 rushing yards on 31 attempts if you remove that 175-yarder where Haynes broke to the left-hand side. What I liked, too, was how Oklahoma can adjust their play based on what the game needs. For example, if Oklahoma needs to be a crazy, high-tempo, fast, speedy operation, they can do that. We know that they can do that. They've done it in the past. But if they need to be a methodical, grinded-out type of team because they have the lead, they want to take some time off the clock, they want to extinguish any chances that the other team might have, they can go on a 16-play drive late in the fourth quarter and take 8 minutes off the clock. This was the biggest win of Brent Venables' tenure. That arguably at the end of the game, there in the fourth quarter, that was the biggest drive of Brent Venables' tenure as the head coach. And what I like so much is just the transformation that we've seen from Oklahoma's program. We have long known Oklahoma to be a group that has had high-octane, record-setting offenses. They're in the 2000s, Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks. But this was a game that was won because of the defensive approach and the physicality across the board, which, by the way, we have long known Brent Venables to have teams that, when he was the defensive coordinator at Clemson, that were super physical, that were grinded out type of units. Now, if you look at just kind of the key stats, it was defensive stops, control, power, all this stuff. And to go against a team who is known for their physicality says an awful lot about the evolution that this program has endured over the last few years. They are absolutely built and prepared to win in the SEC along the lines of scrimmage with their defensive line. Now, offensive line Would like to see maybe a little bit better push from time to time. That's a great group they're playing against. How many times on third down did John Mateer make an outstanding play? It had to have been 3 or 4 times, whether it's the first third down of the game, a handful of 3rd and 9s. He runs around, makes guys open downfield, throws great balls, tight windows. I love their quarterback run game. Their quarterback run game in the red zone is going to be very difficult to defend. And I love how hard John Mateer runs the football as well. There was one play in particular. It was a 3rd and 3 at or around midfield, second half of the football game. He hits that hole as if he's a running back. I mean, he plays with some reckless abandon that you have to appreciate. The way he's able to fit the ball into tight windows downfield, the way he's able to manipulate snap count to get guys to jump off sides, throw it on a free play to convert a 3rd and 9. He just has a savvy and a moxie to him that just takes good quarterback play to the next level, elite quarterback play. We'll talk a little bit more about him in just a moment. But our team of the week, and it should come as no surprise, it's the Oklahoma Sooners. Tip your cap, Boomer Sooner, amazing performance against I think a really good Michigan football team. Takeaway number 2, Michigan's going to be just fine. Watching that game back, we'll start with what they have on the offensive side. We'll start with Bryce Underwood's performance. You're going to watch and look at the 9 of 24 for 142, and you're going to say, that's just not a winning stat line. But there were some really positive moments. There were a couple times in which he took advantage of Oklahoma, who would uncover when he scrambles to his right and a guy's open downfield. That shows poise. That shows feel. A lot of young quarterbacks in that scenario, they become a runner and they never come back to becoming a passer. Bryce Underwood kept his eyes downfield, hit what would have been an 8-9 yard run. Instead, it's a 25+ yard throw. That was really encouraging. I also thought he threw a really nice ball down the right sideline on the move as well. He also played and had some moments where he really felt like a freshman. There were some misses. There were a couple throws in which I don't think it was the best decision to throw it in that direction. I know that they're without a playmaker to a tight end. I get that. That's a challenge. And the more they get healthy, the better weaponry they have. I think Bryce Underwood is going to be a star. I really believe that. His makeup, his willingness to cut it loose, didn't agree with every decision he made in the game. And I felt like the offensive play calling, for the most part, it was a little conservative. But I understand that. You have a young player, you trust your defense, you don't want to put too much on his shoulders. I think he's capable of more. There wasn't a ton of just traditional drop back, read it out, pure progression stuff. That's okay. It'll get there. I know it's in the offense. But if you look at the Oklahoma defensive plan, they were completely selling out against the run. Most of the game, they had safeties that were playing 8-10 yards deep at the absolute most. And the Wolverines, they kind of demonstrated a bit of a lack of willingness to just take some shots downfield. Maybe it has to do with the fact that they don't really love their wide receivers. I think they have a couple guys that are all right. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say any of their wideouts are true game-changing difference makers. And that's okay. That's at this point. Maybe here in 2 weeks, they develop a little more rapport. There's a little more chemistry. There's a little bit more trust that the staff has with Bryce Underwood and with that group as a whole. But I kind of look at it, man, they're going to have to be able to manufacture some big plays. They're going to have to be able to manufacture off-play action. They run it too well. They're too good up front not to be able to challenge downfield. But against great defensive personnel, how much will Michigan be able to move the football? If you look at some of the teams that are on their schedule, if they can't develop a little bit more aggressiveness offensively, how are they going to keep up with the likes of an Ohio State, who we know defensively is off the charts good this year? And I know Michigan's had Ohio State's number. I totally get that. We'll see where that game goes. It's still 10 weeks from now, so who knows what they're going to look like at that point. But I think this is an era right now where you see the likes of potentially Oregon at some point. You look at what USC has. You look at some of these other teams that Michigan might face in the Big Ten. If they get to the Big Ten championship, obviously big if they're going to have to score. If they want to win national championships, they're going to have to score. Right now, there are some concerns about them being able to do that right now because Nebraska's on the schedule. They've demonstrated a lot of growth. Washington is a team that I think has quite a bit of firepower. Ohio State's got firepower. USC's got firepower. Those teams are all on the schedule. So when you look at Michigan, I think they're going to have to be able to develop some offensive continuity because if they can't just break off 75-yard runs, will they be able to methodically move their way down the field? That's something I look forward to watching. But I don't think all is lost for them. I actually was pretty impressed with the defense. They just had a couple third down conversions given up that led to points, and they got to get off the field there on the final drive to give their offense a chance. Takeaway number 3, the Heisman race is a long way from being finished, but it's clear John Mateer is in the driver's seat right now. And we know Oklahoma's defense set the tone. We understand that. But the offense was almost completely reliant on what John Mateer did. When he transferred over from Washington State, you already knew that he was going to be an immediate upgrade over whatever Oklahoma had last year at quarterback. We knew that. But we also wondered, okay, against the teams he played against at Washington State, there's a huge gap between the level of competition that he saw there in Pullman and the level of competition he's going to see week in and week out in the SEC and in the non-conference against Michigan. Well, he rose to the occasion, goes for 344, accounts for 3 touchdowns, did an amazing job, I thought, with some of his runs, some of his designed runs, a couple of crucial scores on the ground that can run him in a lot of different ways. He can run on the edge because he's got some speed. He can run up the middle because he's got some bulk and he's got some power. But I also thought, too, there were some plays that were left on the field. And there were a couple missed throws in this game. If you look at it, there were a few throws that were just a little bit too flat. Now, we know he has kind of a sidearm type of delivery, right? Which occasionally is, one, it's really fun to watch, but 2, it does leave the ball with the trajectory on the ball a little bit flat. If he can just learn how to throw with a touch more air, just a little bit more touch to allow those receivers to run underneath it on the deep balls, man, this thing could have gotten sideways. There were a couple times, too, where guys were open behind the defenders and they flat ball led to an incompletion. However, man, he's in week 2. Playing with new wide receivers, new personnel, same offense that he ran in the past with great success. But those are throws that he will make as the season goes along, as they develop more chemistry, as they develop more continuity. I think he is absolutely the Heisman Trophy frontrunner right now. And that's not based on the performance in this game, because he played fantastic in this game. Absolutely fantastic, I thought. The mobility, the running threat that he always has, keeping plays alive, third down efficiency, little things that he did, some decision making, the one bad throw, high picked, all that stuff. But for the most part, man, he's just getting started, which is a scary thought for some of the teams that are on the schedule for the Oklahoma Sooners here in the years to come. And now with a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback paired with a really aggressive and difference-making defense led by a defensive front that can take over the game. I think Oklahoma, because of the arrival of John Mateer, is a legitimate national championship contender. Answer me this right now in college football. And you might look at your guy and say, okay, I'll take my guy over John Mateer. How many teams right now in college football would absolutely love to have John Mateer as their starting quarterback? Answer me this question. Who would you rather have at quarterback right now than John Mateer based on what we saw this past week? Guts, moxie, playmaking ability, accuracy down the field, running threat. Who would you rather have? Now, maybe there's a Baylor fan out there saying Sawyer Robertson, who I love, by the way. He's amazing. Maybe people are still very much high on what Arch Manning's going to develop into. I love Lenora Sellers. I love a handful of other guys in the country right now. But I've watched quarterback play all over the country the last 2 weeks. And right now, I don't think there's a guy that is more dangerous than John Mateer. Therefore, our dude of the week goes to John Mateer. Annual weekly trophy given away. Dude of the week, John Mateer. Incredible play. He sits atop the Heisman Trophy list right now here after week number 2. Takeaway number 4. There's impressive, and then there's Oregon, Ohio State, and Florida State. All right. Now, you look at a bunch of teams, and we'll talk about them here in just a little bit. But there were a bunch of teams that kind of struggled. There were a bunch of teams that were a bit sluggish in their performances last weekend. Maybe there's a bit of a hangover. Maybe there's a bit of a look ahead. Whatever the circumstances may be, there were a bunch of teams that were underwhelming. But I can tell you a few that weren't: Oregon, Ohio State, and Florida State. There is no doubt about the elite status of those teams and their performance. Historically impressive blowouts. It sent a clear message. We'll start with Oregon because they were at least playing against a Power 4 opponent. They completely destroyed Oklahoma State 69-3, set a program record for the largest margin of victory against a power conference opponent. They were outrageously efficient. They were up 41-3 at halftime, 473 yards in the first half alone for Oklahoma State. To just put things in perspective, the 66-point margin of defeat, worst loss since 1907. That was the year that Oklahoma became a state, for the record. If you look at it too, the safeties and the defense for Oklahoma State, man, they were so aggressive. Man, I watched this Oregon offensive line. I love the way they move. I love the way they engage. And with the aggressiveness that we saw at times from Oklahoma State's defense, man, the way these guys were pulling and locating their responsibility in the run game is amazing. I love how athletic they are up front. And so far through 2 weeks, man, Dante Moore has been incredible. He's got that next level accuracy that's just hard to comprehend. Now, some guys watch and evaluate quarterback play, and they view an accurate pass as any pass that's caught by the wide receiver and or dropped by the wide receiver. Like if it's on the guy, it's a good throw. I don't look at it that way. When I'm talking about, quote, next level accuracy, I'm talking about ball placement and where it hits the receiver when it arrives. Next level accuracy is the perfect touch on the downfield throws, the perfect placement on the downfield throws, the perfect trajectory on the downfield throws to make it really catchable for the receiver. On the underneath throws, next level accuracy is accuracy that hits the receiver right on the face mask. Because what do we always say if you're trying to catch the ball, right? Like you want to look it into your hands, like you want to look at it all the way through. Next level accuracy is on the face mask. So the receiver will never take his eyes off the ball if the ball is right there in his face. If the receiver didn't even put his hands up, the ball had a legitimate chance of getting stuck in the face mask on multiple throws this past weekend. Ridiculous. And then one other thing about Oregon's offense that I absolutely am obsessed with, their screen game is dumb. I don't know how you rush the passer against them. I mean, if you are trying to pin your ears back and blitz and come after them, well, their screen game is ridiculous. There were several in this game in which there's 4 or 5 Oregon offensive linemen and wide receivers that are leading the charge with a guy that's running 22 miles an hour right behind him. Absolutely amazing performance and an annihilation of Oklahoma State. Well, Ohio State was equally destructive in their 70-0 annihilation of Grambling. Julian Sands started the game by completing his first 16 for 290 and 4 touchdowns. I understand that you look at who they're playing against, you could say, oh, okay, it's Grambling. That's fine. Other than the dropped pitch on a little pitch in the red zone, it was completely flawless. Watching Julian Sands, too, thought after week 1 it was a very ball control, game manager style passing attack. Well, they loosened them up a lot with a couple screens. Thought, okay, much of the same. They're just going to get it to their playmakers and kind of loosen things up. And then you watch them throw it down the middle to Mesmeric on the touchdown. They're right down the middle. Man, that was a thing of beauty. Also, a couple guys that get behind the defense, and he finds them downfield, like thing of beauty. So I loved what I saw from Julian Sands. If he can continue to build on performances like that with accuracy and decision-making, they're going to be in great shape at quarterback. And then Florida State. From the opening kickoff, they were in complete control. They scored on their first 10 offensive possessions, piling on points to the point that the game is completely out of reach. It's 49-0 at halftime. 77 points was the highest scoring output of the Mike Norvell era. But what I loved most about this performance, and we talked last week about Thomas Castellanos, his arrival, and how he makes them so different offensively. Well, in this game, it was Deuce Robinson that was catching my eye. The one-hand catch in the end zone, he's given me some serious Keon Coleman vibes. I mean, when I watched Keon Coleman a couple years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's unbelievable. That's what I'm getting right now from Deuce Robinson. His length is a huge problem. He's got top-end speed that I didn't realize he had. I'm watching their offensive line just firing off the ball. It seems like on every play, they're reestablishing the line of scrimmage. I understand that people will point to the level of competition. I'm not worried about who they're playing against. I'm worried about the level of execution. So yes, people say cupcake, fine. Who cares? It's fine to me. There are plenty of, quote, cupcake games in which teams didn't look dominant. So when you look at Ohio State, you look at Oregon, you look at the machine-like precision from the first play of the game. Look at the level of explosiveness. Look at their quarterback play. I'm loving right now the level of expectation that I'm now having when I put on the tape with those teams, knowing that they will live up to expectations every single time they step on the field. Number 5, takeaway. I love the bounce back from Alabama from Arch Manning. We will start quickly with Arch Manning. Watched every play of this game, and I actually agree with his assessment that it wasn't perfect. Good. Like, you don't want it to be perfect for a young player. I mean, because now he can look at it and maybe not get a false sense of confidence, a false sense of assurance. I thought there was a lot of positives in this one. He finished the day with a pretty impressive stat line, went for 295 through the air, 5 total touchdowns. I like how they kind of started the game. Remember last week, they started them on kind of a rollout, didn't get them an easy completion. They start this time with a little jet sweep, just throw, kind of get the stat line popping a little bit early. He clearly has a nice connection with Parker Livingston, who has caught now 4 catches for 128 and 2 scores. I really liked how they utilized Livingston, and I think his role in this offense is going to grow quite a bit. I also love the role that Jack Entries is starting to play for this team as well. The tight end transfer from Cal, you're hitting him off play action. You're getting him involved in the red zone. But the best throw from Arch Manning in this game might have been in the second quarter with 7:45 remaining. He rolls out to the left just a little bit, throws an absolute dart to the far sideline off play action to DeAndre Moore for a 17-yard gain. Now, I know Manning, he was kind of critical after the game. Some sloppy play, things that need to be addressed. But if you look at a couple protection lapses, a couple drops, there were a couple misses for sure. But I think that there's a lot of things to take away from this game that I'm very optimistic about. The protection can clean up, sure. I think the emergence of Endries as a red zone threat is huge. The get-right game was massive. They had to have it because it was a poor outing offensively. So to effectively execute against an inferior opponent makes you feel quite a bit better. As far as Alabama is concerned, looking at the performance, people will look at Ty Simpson going 17-17. People will look at the emergence of the potential difference maker in Jeremy Bernard and how he continues to grow. You look at now a new running back with Kevin Riley and the juice that he might provide at that position in Jam Miller's absence. I was watching the effort in this game. That's all I wanted to watch. I wanted to watch the effort. I wanted to watch the execution. And while Louisiana Monroe is not a team that is going to challenge Alabama physically, I wanted to see the defensive line. I wanted to see their get off. I wanted to see how they attacked on defense. And what I saw this past weekend, that's the recipe for Alabama moving forward. That level of effort, that level of intensity, that level of get off, that level of gap penetration, that is a repeatable recipe. If they can continue with that, continue to get highly effective play from their quarterback spot. I thought Ty Simpson played great in the game. You usually see a group that's going 16 or 17-17. You're thinking, all right, it's a bunch of dink and dunk underneath stuff. Sure, there was a lot of that. There's also a few plays, though, where he's moving in the pocket. Guys are trying to pull at his jersey. He's strong, keeps 2 hands on the ball, delivers the ball that's actually pretty well covered. Perfect spot for his receiver to go and get it. Man, I thought this was a fantastic bounce back from Alabama. It was the type of dominant performance that you absolutely had to kind of quiet the noise, to regain their footing and to reestablish some confidence on both sides of the ball for the Crimson Tide. Takeaway number 6, Clemson has some work to do. Now, if you watch this game and you watch Troy's defense in this game, their safeties on first and second down were playing about 8 to 10 yards deep. Why would they do that? They were literally daring Clemson to try to throw it over their head. They were not respecting the deep ball. They didn't respect anything over the top for the most part. They said, you know what, we're going to just tee off, and we believe our pass rush can get home and affect Cade Klubnik, so you're not going to have time to let those downfield routes develop. That's basically what Troy said by watching the Clemson Tigers in week 1 against LSU. Troy said, you know what, here's our recipe. They're not going to be able to throw it over our head because we think we can get home. We think our pressure, we think our aggressiveness, they can get home. So, hey, don't worry about the deep ball. We'll just play those safeties deep. We'll get them involved in the run game, and we'll put all the pressure on Cade Klubnik in the passing attack to see if they can hold up long enough in protection to allow guys to open up downfield. And guess what? It worked pretty well there for an early portion of that game. Let's talk about Cade Klubnik. He's clearly uncomfortable right now. Okay. And this is a guy that I think was so good last year and so decisive last year, so accurate last year. There were a few times in this game where the protection is actually pretty good. It's held up, and guys are trying to work their routes downfield, and he's leaving the pocket when he doesn't need to. He's actually making the integrity of the protection worse by getting on the move. He's rolling into trouble, as we say, and that's not a good sign for a guy that is now in year 3 as a starting quarterback. There were a handful of guys that were open, especially in the first half, and there were just misses. There were throws where he wasn't on the same page with the wide receiver. There were guys that see zone coverage and they're stopping like they should. He's anticipating them staying on the move. He throws, the ball's inside, about to be a blow up if the receiver were to run to where Cade Klubnik was throwing. He just missed him. So he's got to get on the same page with his wide receivers, because those guys at times were not anticipating where he was throwing, and he was not anticipating them sitting where they sat. So that's something that's got to get cleaned up for a guy who's played a lot of football. And with all the weapons back, it's not like these guys are new. It's not like these are freshmen. It's not like these guys haven't played together before in difficult circumstances. You also have a situation where just the next level accuracy just needs to improve as well. I mean, guy, for example, is running a screen. They're in the red zone, and the throw is low, so the guy's got to drop to a knee. So what would have been a touchdown in now a 2-yard loss. And if you look at the second half, much better. Much, much better. So here's hoping things can get cleaned up a little bit. Okay. I really liked, for example, the throws, a 3rd and 3, a touchdown over the top. Like, it's a great play. Maybe it's just that one play that can like settle things down. Just settle things down completely. Things are moving a little bit too quickly for Cade Klubnik, and here's hoping things will settle down. As far as Adam Randall and the experiment that they have now going as a starting running back, I mean, he's just not a real natural running back, and that's okay. I think he can be a power back. I think he can be a piece for him for sure. But if you look at him in this game, his lack of reps, and I'm talking reps dating back to a lot of these times, these running backs now in college football, I mean, they've been carrying the football between the tackles for 10, 12 years. These guys start playing running back at 8 years old, and at 21, like, they're in good shape. Well, you can just tell in this game there were a few holes there that were open, and there were a few holes there that I think Will Shipley would have hit, that Travis Etienne would have hit, that Phil Maffa would have hit. And because of Adam Randall's newness at the position, he didn't hit him quite quickly enough. He didn't quite set up the blocker quickly enough. He might have hit it a little too hard, and he's got to have a little bit of savvy to just kind of let that thing open up. Just hesitate just a hair, and then boom, accelerate through the hole. He's just not outrageously quick laterally, so he's got to make sure that he has some patience in the run game. Here's the thing that's worrying me most about Clemson is the team is giving me some 2021 vibes a little bit. Remember that game, 2021, they lose a super physical game against Georgia in week 1. That Georgia team, remember, in 21, went on to win the national championship, one of the most talented teams in the country. And they kind of shell-shocked Clemson there in week 1. They lost that game 10-3. DJ Uiagalelei never really found his vibes again after that. He was kind of all over the place there for a few weeks. They ended up going and winning 10 games that year. So, I mean, like, a bad year for Clemson is a 10-win season. But you look at how many dogfights they had in 2021. They lost to NC State. They lost to Pitt. But they had a handful of games where it was like every game was a complete dogfight. This team is kind of feeling like that right now. I think there's a higher ceiling in there. I believe in Cade Klubnik. I believe in their weaponry offensively. I love their wide receivers. I didn't think they did a great job in this game uncovering on a few different occasions. I just want to see them play up to their potential, and we have not seen it yet in the first 2 weeks. I'm hoping it's in there. I hope that it's a team that has a higher ceiling than what we've witnessed so far. I think they're great on defense, but right now the offense just seems a little bit shell-shocked. So here's hoping that the second half performance against Troy, where they really played much more efficient football, that's what we will come to see from them as the season continues on. Takeaway number 7. There are some quiet contenders out there in Illinois and Iowa State. Now, the biggest headlines of the weekend will go to Oklahoma. We'll go to Arch Manning bouncing back. We'll go to the juggernaut performances that we saw from Ohio State, Oregon, Florida State, and others. But there were two teams I thought that had some real gritty performances, impressive, solid wins that should solidify their status as legitimate playoff contenders. I don't know if either, well, I think in the case of Iowa State, they're a legitimate conference championship contender. I don't know yet with Illinois, but I looked at Illinois and their performance against Duke this weekend, and that was going to be a tough game. Duke is athletic. Duke has really good weapons on the outside. Duke has a quarterback that can make a lot of plays, but they just beat Duke 45-19. That was their most lopsided non-conference road win since 2001. So Illinois goes on the road against a P4, a team that won 9 games a year ago, and they now are in a great spot to continue on with what they've built. What I loved most about this was a bit of a killer instinct that we saw from Illinois. Yes, Duke made mistakes in the game. Yes, Duke had mistakes forced against them. Strip sacks, great plays on interceptions, punching the ball out. Yes, Duke muffed a punt. Illinois didn't do anything to deserve getting the ball inside the 10. But guess what? When they got it, boom, they took advantage. Illinois didn't do anything to force Duke to have 2 guys on a special teams unit with the same number that gives them a first down. Boom, Illinois takes advantage. Like, that's a killer instinct mentality that I really like to see. You can't always control some of the mistakes the opposition might make, but you know what you can do? You can take advantage of every single one of those mistakes. And I felt like Illinois did that beautifully throughout this game, whether it's poor pursuit, great play calls, 3rd and 21 tunnel screen that they take advantage of, 3rd down in the red zone, perfect coverage, perfect everything. And yet Altmaier throws a ball to the back corner of the end zone that was beautiful. Big question for Illinois coming into the season was, what do things look like as far as their weaponry? What do things look like with their personnel on the outside? I'm no longer concerned about their wide receivers. I think that group's pretty dang sporty. I think Luke Altmaier's grown tremendously. I do think the offensive line had their hands full in the first half of that game. They gave up 4 sacks. What happened in the second half? Much, much better, right? So I think there's a killer instinct about this Illinois team that I really appreciated watching that game back. And I think that's something that you can build on. Look, when teams mess it up, you don't let them off the hook. When teams mess it up and you force some mistakes, you don't just, let it go. No, you finish. Like, you go for the jugular. Illinois did so many, many times. And to me, as far as big picture takeaways, that's a unique that's a unique skill and a unique mentality that has to be had. And I thought it was on display beautifully this weekend. And for Iowa State, look, this was going to be a hard-fought defensive battle. Okay, we knew that the Cy-Hawk game between Iowa and Iowa State is always going to come down to the wire. It's a game that's going to be won in the margins. And while we can come out of this game saying, well, offensively, I don't know. And yes, the defense was great, but maybe that's more about Iowa's offense. And remove all of that. Okay, remove all of that and the possible negativity. You just beat your in-state rival and you took care of business. That's all you needed to do. You kick at the 54-yard field goal to win, to snap a 6-game home losing streak. The dates all the way back to 2011. Some of these guys were 5 years old that were playing for the Cyclones right now. The last time they won a game in Ames against the Hawkeyes. Rocco Beck, people will look at his numbers and they'll say, I don't know. What does he do with the game on the line? What does he do in a gotta-have-it situation? What does he do when the team needs a drive to put the game on ice? The guy always makes plays. The guy always steps up. Now, we know Iowa State's identity under Matt Campbell. They're an overachieving bunch whose complete identity is about maximizing their personnel. And by winning, if a game comes down to 6 plays, Iowa State's going to try to win 5 or 4 of those 6 plays. And they almost always do. That's why they're a team that is always in the mix. Now, what I'm really excited about is I think their defense has taken a big step forward this year. The complementary nature with how they're playing right now and the offense's ability to rise to the occasion when they have to have it has me feeling very bullish on what Iowa State can do. Both Iowa State and Illinois, games and victories that might be flying under the radar nationally, not on this show. Tons of credit for the performances that we saw from those two teams. Takeaway number 8. USF is in complete control of the G5. Now, through 2 weeks, one of the most surprising storylines here in college football is the emergence of South Florida. Now, they are the only team in the country with 2 wins against AP top 25 opponents. Now, a lot of people haven't had that opportunity, but still, to have that opportunity to play 2 teams ranked in the top 25, and after dominating, absolutely dominating Boise State, they go on the road and upset the Florida Gators. Now, with this resume, guys, and remember, the College Football Playoff Committee, regardless of what happens with USF moving forward, and hey, they still got to go and win the American because you don't make the playoff from the G5 unless you win your conference. There should be nobody that is even close to USF right now. Now, I got a ton of respect for UNLV. I got a ton of respect for other teams. There are plenty of other G5 opportunities out there. Maybe Boise beats Notre Dame, but even if they do, doesn't matter. USF has the head-to-head. Maybe Memphis beats Arkansas. Maybe there's other performances that factor into this discussion, but with their resume, they are absolutely head and shoulders above all else. And Alex Golesh, their head coach, man, this has been a remarkable turnaround from where they were last year to where they are this year, and just how good they've become on the defensive side of the football. Look, this has been a bit of a high-risk, high-reward approach by scheduling 2 ranked brand name opponents to start your season. You now get a chance to take on the Miami Hurricanes, and by winning both, you're already so far ahead of everybody else, man. You got to be really encouraged by what we've seen. Look, we know that the state of Florida has long been dominated by the big 3. That's Florida, Florida State, and Miami. We know that. But now that they go and knock off the Gators, they now have a chance to throw their hat in the ring against Miami. If they're just competitive against Miami, or if they pull off another shocking upset, this would be a monumental story that we will talk about here for a number of years on Always College Football. Man, USF, the way they defend, the turnaround that we've seen on that side of the ball, the personnel that we've seen on that side of the ball. I love their quarterback, Byron Brown. Remember, he got hurt last year. He's now healthy. He's a game changer, and he was the best player on the field against the Gators last week. And everyone will point to the mistakes the Gators made. Fine. Hey, what did we just talk about with Illinois? Killer instinct, baby. If they're going to give me a new lease on life, if they're going to give me opportunities, I am going to seize control. That's what USF has displayed here these first 2 weeks. Takeaway number 9. We need to cool it with the hot takes in week 2. Now, I understand where we're at. I get it. Okay. I understand why people react the way they do. I understand with everybody's voice being heard in the world that we live in with social media and hot takes galore and the amount of response that people get when thriving on negativity, like people like negative. I get that. We here at Always College Football, we really try to find the silver lining. So for those of you that are coming to us expecting us to fire Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, for those of you that are coming to us telling us to fire Billy Napier at Florida, I'm not willing to do that just yet. Now, do both those coaches deserve some intense scrutiny? Of course. And for Billy Napier especially, right? The loss to USF was a shocking, and it felt like in many ways it was a self-inflicted result. Now, there's a ton of criticism about the team's lack of discipline. There's a ton of criticism about the late game play calling that he's responsible for. There's a ton of criticism about some clock management issues. This is the 4th straight season that Florida has lost one of their first 2 games, and the brutal schedule that's coming up does not allow for much time to kind of sulk. They got number 3 LSU this week. They'll go to Miami the following week. Things could get off the rails really quickly. And I understand why people are frustrated. Look, he was brought to Florida from Louisiana because of his reputation for building a meticulous, process-driven, disciplined program. And now everything looks like that's now out the window. Like, I don't think Billy Napier's forgotten how to coach, but they need to definitely iron some things out. They absolutely need to iron some things out. But I remember when we rewind back to 2024 and things got off the rails against Miami in the first game of the season. What was the reaction from everybody? All right, look at the buyout numbers. Oh, he's got to go. Here we go. And what do they end up doing down the stretch? Very few teams in college football were playing better football than the Florida Gators in November last year. They knock off a playoff-bound Ole Miss. they knock off and completely extinguish any opportunity that LSU had to make the college football playoff. They had so many moments down the stretch where it's like, okay, they give Georgia all they want, by the way. They're at the midway point of the season. Like, this is a team, this is a marathon. This is a marathon in college football nowadays. And to jump to conclusions after week 2 about what a team might become, I think is a dangerous game. I also look at teams like Baylor last year. Dave Aranda was left for dead when they started 2-4, and they win 6 in a row. Everyone wanted to fire Kalen DeBoer on 1,000 other platforms because of the performance against Florida State in week 1. Well, maybe Florida State's really good. Maybe Florida State's the real deal. Maybe Alabama run into a buzzsaw week 1 against a really good quarterback and a significantly improved team with 50 new players. Maybe that's possible. So, let's wait before we get on this guy's got to go type of conversation. Now, for Mike Gundy, it was a disastrous performance against Oregon, but it was not surprising. It was not surprising to see that team get completely destroyed by a team that has vastly more talent. And no one's going to ever tell me that Mike Gundy's not a legend at Oklahoma State. He is. And while I understand the scale of the defeat, the worst loss in program, really in modern era program history, their worst loss since 1907, it's alarming. There's no doubt Mike Gundy, prior to 2024, had never lost a game by more than 50 points. He's now had major losses of 52 and 66 points in the last 2 years. And I think part of the problem, though, is that Mike Gundy has kind of pointed to the massive NIL resource disparity between Oregon, who we played last week, and the traditional model that he's used in the past is a program building developmental program that's based on culture and developing talent, diamonds in the rough, what have you. That's not really the way it works nowadays. You got to have deep pockets. So the guys that are writing the checks to the players to say that you don't have enough money, I don't think that's a winning recipe as things move forward. So look, I'm not calling for jobs. I'm not calling for people to be fired by any stretch. I won't do that. That's not my cup of tea. Things do need to improve, though, as the season goes along for Oklahoma State, for Florida, for other teams and other coaches that have had some challenging starts to the season. But it doesn't mean it's over. Teams can improve, players can improve, and coaches can get a much better sense of who they are after week 3, 4, and 5 than they can maybe after week 1 and 2. Because remember, just 2 years ago, this was a Oklahoma State program that lost by 3+ touchdowns, 4+ touchdowns to South Alabama in week 3 of the season, only to see them go on some ridiculous run in the Big 12 stretch to make it to the Big 12 title game. So not counting them out just yet by any stretch, more tipping the cap to the teams they've lost to, I think is the appropriate approach after just 2 weeks of the season. Takeaway number 10. Sluggish performances from Georgia, LSU, and Penn State should not sound the alarm just yet. Now, we saw dominance in a few places, right? We saw dominance that we have documented kind of across the board from Ohio State, Oregon, others. There was a lot of dominant performances this weekend. But you have 3 teams that were in the top 5 in Georgia, LSU, and Penn State that were winners, but it was not beautiful en route to the victory. We'll start with Georgia. They win the game 28-6 over Austin Peay. They had the weather delay. The offense has kind of struggled to find a bit of a rhythm so far, and you'd like to see things improve for that group as they move forward. Here's the things I did not like. I thought the protection was not great from time to time. I don't like right now how conservative they are with their passing attack. I don't think against Tennessee this week, for example, you can dink and dunk your way to victory. You can hit those screens and short throws all they want, but at some point you got to have some development downfield. Now they desperately need to attack the standard drop back passing game. And that needs to be a huge point as they continue to move forward. We know what Georgia wants to be. They want to be a physically imposing team that can just pound it. They might be that this year. I think the offensive line in the run game, I think the element of the quarterback run this year, they might very well be that. But you also, against top-tier competition, what's the goal for Georgia? Win the national championship, right? That's the goal. Well, they're going to have to be able to beat you through the air. And until I see them take strides in that direction, it's hard for me to feel real good about what we've seen from them. Just look at the goal line sequence at the end of the half, too. A couple of throws off the mark, but couldn't punch in at the end of the half. I get it. The time was not on their side. But I think this team needs to absolutely develop a little bit more, and they'll be just fine. But there's things to work on for sure. LSU, not super sharp in their 23-7 win against Louisiana Tech. Continue to love their defense. They give up just 154 total yards, but the offense was not great. Nussmeier threw a badly thrown, underthrown ball early, led to a pick, bad throw. A couple of drops by wide receivers. I like how they're using Xavion Thomas right now. That's encouraging. But the offense just in general, the passing attack in general, the last 2 weeks, a little bit hit or miss. I wonder, now, people have said that Nussmeier's dealing with some injuries. Nussmeier might have something in his abdomen, might have the knee issue, but just something right now from an offensive rhythm standpoint, even dating back to the game against Clemson, there's just something that's just not all the way there just yet. But hey, big opportunity this weekend against Florida at home. Hopefully they can get back on track and look a little bit more dynamic on the offensive side of the football. And then for Penn State, a little bit of a slow start, right, against FIU. Just 10-0 at halftime. They were a massive, massive favorite in this game. They pulled away in the second half. There's one thing right now. You had some good field position. They couldn't really finish drives. Things just didn't look great. Blocked field goal, whatnot. Second half was much better. Drew Aller kind of finished the day. The numbers weren't great. A couple touchdowns. I thought there were some high points in the game. Liked the throw and the touchdown to Devontae Ross, who had an impressive one-handed catch. The running game also got going as things went along. You saw Katrin Allen break a big run in the fourth quarter. So I'm encouraged by what's in there. I just haven't seen it all just yet. And they don't have anybody this week. Penn State's schedule is just atrocious. But for the most part, man, this team and this offense want to see a little bit more from them as they continue on. And these sluggish performances, man, these are championship hopefuls. These are national championship hopefuls. Just want to see that offense be dynamic because we've talked about it already with Oregon, with Ohio State, with other teams that can really fill it up on the scoreboard. You're going to need to make sure you can go point for point in the event in which your defense doesn't have their best stuff on that given day. Now, a win is a win, but the matter of how they win is important. And it was a lack of execution in some cases, a little bit lethargic. We know they're talented. We know that. But right now, you might need to score 30, 35, 40, 45 in a playoff game when your defense doesn't have their best stuff. So all three of these games kind of, quote, trap games. You got conference opponents coming up next week. Flat performances is not something that is uncommon. It's not something that's new, but I just want to see them play to their potential. One other takeaway on some of these games against G5 competition. These G5 guys, like at Louisiana Tech, like at Austin P, like at FIU. FIU, by the way, good example. There's a handful of their players that have actually gotten recruited to Power 4 programs this year. A lot of these G5 teams are using these games as a legitimate audition tape. So you're getting better effort now from these G5 players than you ever have before, because if a guy balls out in that game against a Power 4 team, they might be in position to get recruited the following year when the transfer portal opens up by Power 4 competition. I've had multiple coaches tell me, yeah, you know what? We watched his game against, say, Arkansas, and we took him because of that game and because of that game exclusively. These G5 guys know that. So they are now giving unbelievable effort because if they ball out in a game against top-tier competition, they might be in line for a big payday next year when they get recruited off their roster. So just saying, take some of these performances with a slight grain of salt. It's a little different dynamic now than it has been in the past. I'm going to give you one bonus here. All right, a little bonus takeaway. Cool? So much for the defenses ahead of the offense. In week one, that was like a huge takeaway, right? Oh, defense better than offense early in the season. Well, came back here in week number 2. There were 1,028 points scored by ranked teams on Saturday. That's one shy of the most in a single day in AP poll history. 1,029 points were scored on September 17th of 2022 and on September 6th of 2014. Now, several teams kind of drove that scoring. 7 top 25 teams scored 60 plus points. That's the most on a single day in the AP poll era. The previous high was 5. That was done 3 times, but 7 did it. First time ever that we've seen go 60 plus. 4 top 25 teams scored 70 plus points. That's tied for the most in a single day in the AP poll era. That was on September 21st, 2013. So offense very much catching up with the defense here based on some week 2 operations. Got to give you some bold predictions before we get out of here, because we ask you every week and we will continue to. We want you to interact with the show. So you can always submit your bold predictions to our YouTube page. You can leave it in the comment section. You can also submit our bold predictions, your bold predictions, on our social media platforms, always CFB, on both Instagram and on Twitter. We'll start with Tony Guidry, 1388. This is from YouTube. Oklahoma 20-10 over Michigan. Well done, Tony. Oklahoma wins the game by 11. You were all over it. Very, very impressive. You call greatness. This also from YouTube. It won't be close. Oklahoma is overrated. Bryce Underwood should get some Heisman mention. Bryce Underwood, just 9 of 24, 142, 0 touchdowns, 3 carries, -1 yard. So, yep, you call greatness, missed it just a little bit, but we appreciate you sending things in. We'll go next to Round Rock Spurs. BYU's quarterback Bear Bachmeier will have more rushing yards than Stanford will have total offense. Bachmeier had just 12 carries for 7 yards, 1 touchdown. He did have 175 through the air. Stanford, however, 161 total yards. So Bachmeier did not go over Stanford's total yardage point from a rushing standpoint, but still BYU's defense holding Stanford to just 161. Man, Stanford's got a whole host of issues. And I watched Andrew Luck run up on the sideline, creating some energy, creating some buzz. But man, they got some problems. That's for sure there at Stanford. Jimmy Woods is up next. This is from X. I'll take ULM to cover against Bama. Vanderbilt wins outright against Virginia Tech, and Michigan wins at Oklahoma. Well, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Vanderbilt did beat Virginia Tech 44-20, but Alabama covered 73-0, and Oklahoma knocked off Michigan 24-13. We'll go next to Lane Cheek 1. This is from Instagram. USF beats Florida. Well done, Lane. USF knocks off the Florida Gators 18-16, and one of the boldest. They were a 17.5-point dog in that game. Might have been around 18.5 at kickoff. USF gets the outright win on the road in the swamp. So Lane Cheek all over it there going into the week last week. Chris Ross 01. This is from Instagram. Stark Vegas comes alive, and Mississippi State knocks off ASU. Mississippi State knocks off Arizona State 24-20. We weren't shocked by that one. If you listened to us last week, it was not surprising. We thought Arizona State win close, but we thought Mississippi State was the play all weekend as far as against the spread. So we were kind of on that one with you there. Great call. JM Jack, SEC goes undefeated in out-of-conference play. They were 13-1 in the non-conference. Florida this past week, the only loss. So close, but not close enough. Florida, of course, puts a bit of a dent in that overall record from the SEC. And then D. Meyer 1. Duke gets blown out by Illinois, and Kentucky upsets Ole Miss. Duke did get blown out by Illinois 45-19, but Ole Miss, they did not get beat by Kentucky. They won 30-23 on the road there in Lexington. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. So appreciate all you guys for being with us, man. It's been awesome to interact with you guys. It's been awesome to continue to bring your input into the show. So continue to tweet at the show at Always CFB. Continue to Instagram into the show. I guess that's what you say. You Insta into the show, whatever it is. I have no idea. And all of you, too, that continue to leave comments on the YouTube page, we will interact with you guys. I can promise you we'll put those in the show. We'll talk about them here on the show. We'll do it on Wednesday, so we look forward to our visits and for your contributions here throughout. For all of us here at Always College Football, we ask you to continue to rate the podcast on your podcast platform of your choosing. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. We'll always have those episodes in your inbox whenever we release them on Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and of course our preview show on Thursday. So for all of us here at ACF, from Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, intern Sam, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day, and remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.